Hello, everybody. This is Daniel here from the FMCG guys, and I'm the proud presenter and moderator of this live session with my friends at Feedonomics slash commerce. Today, we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, which is, I think, the speciality of Feedonomics, which is basically data management and how basically having your data in place and using it in the right way can actually not only tidy the house and make and help you take better decisions, but actually it can help your products show up more, which we know that in the current compressed funnel, it's very important that your brand shows up regardless of the occasion and the place. So happy to be accompanied by two people that I could basically call friends by now. On one side, we have Mo Danji, who's the strategic account director at Feedonomics. And on the other side, we have Joao Faria, who's the digital marketing and e-commerce lead at the famous Flora Group, which we'll hear more about in a minute. Hi, guys. How are you?
All good. All good. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah.
So by the way, since this is a live session, I'll talk to you a bit about the maybe rules of the game or how the dynamic will work. Obviously, it looks like a presentation, but I think we'll treat it more like a live discussion or live podcast. But the fun thing is that since it's a live event, the audience, the people that are connected, can actually ask questions. The way that I would encourage you to do it is as we're talking, discussing, debating, maybe disagreeing, maybe there'll be some controversy there. You can send us your comments or your questions in the chat, which should be at your right. We will basically answer the questions in two ways. And some, if we think that they're super relevant to what we're talking about, we will answer in the moment. And if not, we will answer them towards the end of the conversation, or maybe that the conversation takes us there. But please don't be a stranger, don't be shy, and ask us as many questions you like. You can even criticize my moderating skills if you like. I'm very open to feedback. But let's introduce our famous guest today. I will start by introducing the one that's next to me on the photograph. It's Joao Faria from Flora. Joao, can you tell us a bit about what you do at Flora, and maybe a bit about Flora for who doesn't? I mean, I think that when you tell people who you are, people will realize about the company.
Yeah, I believe that there are some attendees that might have in the fridge some of our products. So I'm João. Thank you, Daniel. I'm the digital marketing and e-commerce lead for Europe at Flora Food Group, specifically in the food services business. So some of the brands that you might have come across from our company are like Bessel, Proactive, Rama, Planta, Flora, Violive. So we play in the categories of spreads, creams, and cheese. So in the company, I do perform the overseeing of all digital and e-commerce investments across 21 markets in Europe. And I'm coming to this forum today actually with three angles because of my experience over the last years. So I did see how product data evolves from different perspectives, from consulting when I was working with BMW Group, agency side when working with brands like New Balance, Lindt, Mars, Pet Nutrition, and Coty, and nowadays from the operating multi-market FMCG complexity that we see in Florida and in the food industry overall. Thank you for having me today. I guess that we need more of these conversations for sure. I guess that there is a big gap between what we see and understand as a...
Well, let me just ask you the question directly, Joao. Like somebody that could be talking about flashier things in marketing and e-commerce, why is data important?
Let's deep dive right away into the actual why product data in specific. Well, I guess that for me, across the different industries that I had touched in, I guess that the product feed, the product data for me is not only about a file or a combination of elements. Nowadays and more, we are talking about a structured product data layer, right? That is the bridge between what the people in the audience and ourselves on a day-to-day. We want our source systems to be function as a source to put the information in front of the users, across all channels that we might imagine, like the search, the marketplaces, retail media, social commerce, and that's the right way where we should start to make it efficient.
Got it. Mo, strategic account director at Feedonomics. What does that mean?
Daniel, that's a great question. That's a great question. Maybe I should ask someone who knows, but no. All joking aside, my title is very ambiguous. Essentially, my role is just to help people get the most out of what they're doing with their data, right? That's what Feedonomics does. That's the area that we play in, and they're the great conversations I get to have on a day-to-day basis, right? So I think just building on a point Zhao said, I think you articulated it very well about data being like a layer almost. I'm just going to add a little bit more context onto that. This is one I've been saving for a little while, right? But having been in the industry for about 11, 12 years now, mainly around kind of tech vendors and optimizing data for digital marketing and marketplaces, etc. It used to be the layer that was essentially seen as like the plumbing, right? So people used to have their data, they used to push it to marketplaces, to advertising channels, retail media. It was the plumbing. Where we're seeing a bit of a shift now is that plumbing being like a performance lever instead. So make the data better, drive better performance. Going back to your question, Daniel, about what my job actually means, it's just helping some of the world's biggest brands to realize that on a day-to-day basis. So that's me in a nutshell.
Do they realize that or not?
Sometimes.
Well, in case somebody connected a bit later, just a reminder that we're gonna be talking here with Joao Faria from Flora and Mo Danji from Feedonomics about unlocking the ad spend hiding in your product data, and that you can ask us questions at the end or during the conversation in the chat on the right. Let's go into it, Mo. Like we were talking, I know there's like 4 big use cases when you think of like product data and like optimizing product data.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, look, what's surprising for me and what I've seen evolve over the years is that we actually have 4 key use cases for something that used to probably live in, Zhao, you relate to this as well, something that used to live in probably a CSV file or an Excel file once upon a time and often used to get forgotten about. Now it's a performance lever and it's driving some of the biggest things brands can do today, right, when it comes to e-com. So just to kind of dig into what those 4 kind of pillars that we see are, I would say number 1 is traditional ad spend. So pushing your product through Google Merchant Center, through meta advertising, the data you're sending there. Number 2, I would say marketplaces, right? Online marketplaces like Amazon, etc. The data you're sending there. 3, retail media, right? We've seen a huge rise in retail media platforms over the last few years. They need to be fed with good data as well. And the 4th one, which is probably on the cusp of everyone's minds right now, and definitely as soon as you log into LinkedIn, you're going to see a post about it, is AI platforms, right? So when it comes to agentic, when it comes to geo, what's actually driving what shows up on those platforms? Again, it's the data, right? So kind of summarizing the point there, it's gone from being a simple use case to now being a driving force behind 4 of the key pillars that are driving e-commerce today in 2026.
Yeah, don't you think it's funny that you're calling traditional media Google and Meta?
Very. Like it's funny. It used to be they used to be the cool kids. Now it's become a bit old school, right? Which is crazy to think. But hey, I think it's something that's ever evolving, and it just shows the nature of this business, right? So
yeah, exactly. And I was gonna ask you, like, from your perspective, where are we in that journey? Like from like the companies that you speak with what like phase of maturity do you think they're in?
I think it's a great question because I think it really differs by different verticals, right? I think speaking as someone that is lucky enough to speak to loads of different brands on a day-to-day basis, I see a high rate of adoption and high rate of maturity in kind of verticals like fashion, to be honest, right? When it comes to really cutting the way, when it's especially around the AI search and things like that. Um, I think if we strip it back a little bit, everything depends on how they're looking at their data, right? So before, if we look at, for example, getting into the weeds of the data and looking at it granularly, product attributes, right? So let's say if we take the fashion example, material composition, what your buttons made out of, that kind of thing. Are they viewing it as just a data source, or are they viewing it as using something to drive the story of their brand, right? Getting across their tone of voice, that kind of thing. So to answer your question, that level of maturity really depends on the mindset of each individual brand in terms of how are they actually looking at that data, then what are they utilizing it for, then how are they getting the best out of that specific platform, or whatever it is they're using. So I think that kind of answers the way I see it.
And Joao, since you're in the weeds every day, where do you think, like, if you have to be self-critical, where do you think you are in that journey?
Before getting there, just because I really like that Mo mentioned the attributes like the materials and so on. I guess
Yeah.
that's indeed a key because with time we also see that minimum compliance with those, like those boring optional fields that we can explore, become right away like a lever for competitive like visibility. Like those can make a difference when we have agents going through not the human eyes but actually crawlers, AI crawlers going through. This makes a difference. About where we are at the moment, Daniel, on that question, I guess that in terms of bringing a proper structure, giving the right spotlight to the what really matters in terms of product data, we are in a journey after. Okay, maybe let me step back. The B2B environment is quite challenging per se because you don't really only need to first develop a capability in house, but you also need to know how to interact with your trade partners. B2B platforms, and I guess that last week we had the chance of talking about it in Amsterdam, Daniel. Like the B2B has an additional layer of difficulty in this case. So in our case, I guess that we did very well, or we are doing very well in terms of centralizing a structured approach to product data, both in terms of the quality from the basics that drive visibility, like titles to descriptions, to those that drive more conversion, like the imagery or other aspects below the fold. So the decentralization of the structure is going well, and we are on a path of making sure that we have an effective localization with relevance. What do I mean by that? So I guess that the same product that we have might need sometimes different emphasis by market, right? So some markets prefer technical performance, some others operational ease, some others wholesale relevance. And that to balance that central structure and the blueprint with a local freedom, I guess it's where we are at the moment. So we structure very well, we have a vision, but to bring it to the actual market, sometimes it's the challenge.
Yeah, it's fascinating because when we think of like data and being visible, etc., you would think more of like immediately about direct to consumer, but then you see how much impact it has across all verticals, right? Anything that needs to be searched, it's becomes super relevant, and it becomes like as Mo said it, the performance lever of the business, right? Which makes a difference. And I wanted to double click on something that you said before, Mo, because when you talked about the use case of retail media, like, one could think that retail media is purely a pay for play, right? But I think that back to the title of this webinar, it's unlocked your ad spend hiding in your product data. Like, does that mean that if you don't have your data in place, you're basically overspending or throwing away money?
Yeah, for sure. What a perfect segue, right? So I think I'll kick off with this one, and Zhao, it would be good to get your input on this as well, right? But I think, Daniel, it's a great question. It's the way I view retail media, and mine's a very, very simplistic view on things, like it is with most things in the world with me. But I think when it comes to how I view it, it's the same as traditional platforms like Google Merchant Center, like Meta advertising, etc. Right, in a very top line way. Now, the reason I say that is that I think that, yes, to your point, it can be a bit of a pay to play, right? You know, if you're investing enough, you're going to come up at the top of search rankings, you're going to get clicks, etc. Where we drill down, and it's to a point Zhao mentioned as well, is about the actual conversion, right? So if we're looking at a really, really simplistic take, if I have a brand that talks about sustainability, talks about natural ingredients, for example, right? If that's not coming up in the title, even though I click in, am I going to convert, right? Yes, it might be all up in my face, as they say, right, in the top of that specific retailer website. But if I click into it and I can't see that it's 100% organic or that it's got the natural ingredients or it's not what I'm looking for, am I going to actually convert, right? So I think it's just little things like that, that ensuring that that tone of voice is captured in the data you're sending to those retail media platforms, that's going to be really, really key. And to kind of just touch on the slide really briefly, I think a lot of what we see, and this is kind of a generic stat in terms of 8 to 15% wasted ad spend, I'd argue that depending on the vertical, it can be significantly more, right? I've seen it to be significantly more because I've seen the uplift that brands have when they fix it, right? So I think that it's just about realizing it's never a lack of product data. It's always there. Brands have it. They've been piling it up for years, right? It's about unlocking it, getting the most out of it. It's not necessarily about spending more. It's just about making the most of what you have, right? So, Zhao, it'd be good to get your kind of opinion on that question as well. I think it was a good one from Daniel.
Yeah, the impact on retail media and investments we do and paid is, yeah, it's crucial. And I will say that sometimes we always come across the issue. Is it a feed problem, product data, or it's a media problem? Even before when we zoom in into an actual media impact. So I would say that sometimes if you see like in these impressions, clicks, but there is no conversion, weak filtering visibility from our side, or weak retail media efficiency, when we see that, then I guess that most brands, when it becomes a pattern, don't really have indeed a media issue. It's like product data, because and I guess that it's our job in FMCG and steering the wheel in digital e-commerce sometimes to make a comparison, what is working and what is not working, right? So sometimes we get it wrong, or brands, I had contact with many brands, and sometimes brands get it wrong in that assessment of what is the impact on retail, and if the issue is with retail media. I guess that we focus a lot, or brands usually focus a lot on channels, tools, campaigns instead of the structure. And sometimes it's important that we look upstream, yeah, because if we jump into bidding, creative, platform tweaks, like while the simple title is vague, categories are too broad or too narrow, or attributes are missing, we are not just like really wasting budget, but we are losing the visibility even before like an auction starts there. Yeah, so I guess that it goes hand in hand. Like every time that we put money in something, we need to make sure that the entire journey up to build a trust in a user that will click in that magic click buy, it needs to be like a full end to end. Yeah.
What do you, in your experience, what are like the classical pitfalls when it comes to like product data? Like, why do you think, and I think it's commonly agreed or generally agreed that this is like a common pitfall in a lot of organizations.
Well, I guess that sometimes it's forgotten that this is this is no longer like a traditional journey. It's like a systemic combination of tools that we use to find products for us. We are no longer in a shop in which the other side of the counter, like 100 years ago, someone was picking the products for us, right? Now we have someone picking the products, but not a person. I guess we talked in the Candid Commerce last year about this, and it was quite cool, this topic. And for me, I guess that as marketers need to understand that for us to appear, we have like titles, categories, attributes. But then when we need to actually build trust enough to have a conversion, the descriptions, the imagery, use cases, reviews, simple stock availability, this matters. And if we don't have the right system, the right platform in place to enable the platforms that are put in front of our users, then we have an issue.
And Mo, you said a sentence that I liked, was just not a lack of product data, because all these data points that George just mentioned are out there, but getting the most out of it, how do you do that?
It's a great question. It's a great question, and I wish there was honestly, I wish there was an easy answer for it, right? But I think this can work in two ways. If I'm generalizing across, let's say, all the companies that we speak to, they're all on a different maturity phase when it comes to just the data, right? What I mean by that is some people know where all the data lives, and there's some organizations that we speak to that do not know where certain attributes that are relevant to telling their brand story live in their ecosystem, right? To some of the smaller brands that are probably dialing in, like that might maybe sound a little bit wild, but it does happen. And I'm sure Zhao can definitely relate to that as well, right, from his experiences. So I think, Daniel, to answer your question in terms of how do we fix that, number one is recognition and acknowledgement of the problem, right? Okay, I have a fragmented data set that lives in various different places across my organization. Essentially, what we do at Feedonomics is we take data from various sources. That could be a PIM, an ERP, any CSV file, Excel, whatever it might be. We bring it all together and then we unify it into our platform where we then optimize and send. So again, just to cap off your question, once we have a brand recognize, okay, where is everything? Then we ask them, okay, send everything to us through whichever source. And then we do that amalgamation of the data, we bring it in, and then we make it better for the endpoints, right? So I think the main thing I want to get across there to your question, Daniel, it's just about helping us to recognize where that data is often the first step that we see. And that's how we then come in and try and fix that. So
I like how you finish the sentence with a gong sound to make it more like important.
Completely unintentional, but if it works, I'll take it. Right?
I liked it. I liked it. I think, shall we move to the next slide, Mo?
Sure.
An interesting one, because we talk a lot, like, Feedonomics obviously relates to product feed. Let me ask you a stupid question, probably, but what is the product feed?
So it's actually a great question, because I wish sometimes we could strip it all back and really look at, okay, what actually is it? So let's go back to my previous answer and let's look at all those different data sources, right? So all those different data sources in their own way are elements that make up the product feed. All the product feed is, in my definition, if you want to quote me on it, then please reference me, but this is just my definition. All the data feed is an amalgamation of the various different product sources in an organization that are brought together in a holistic one file or one feed, whether that be by API or Excel, whatever it might be, that can then be pushed onto a advertising channel or any other endpoint. So that's my definition of what a data feed actually is, right? Now,
so data feed is not the same as a product description page.
No, it drives the product description page. So the feed comes in, and then what's in the feed will actually populate the fields in the product description page that relevant to the attributes that are in the feed.
How, like, Joao, since you're in the brand side, how does that work for you guys, like, in practice?
The theory and the process totally aligned with Mo. I know, from the simple, taking the concept of feed from the creation to standardization, enrichment, optimization, syndication, protection. And I know that Feedonomics also goes through this journey. I know, I'm familiar with that. But all that, and then, of course, leading into a product description page that can vary across platforms. This is not where the reality, at least right now on the food services in Europe, not only for us, but overall. Because, for example, if we talk about syndication, that is the ultimate, like, then automation step from a proper feed, from a proper setup. This is not something that there is an infrastructure ready. I guess it's our it's the direction to go, and I know that there are other industries much ready with that. But yeah, that's I am completely aware and agree that this is the proper way of doing it. Mainly when in a time that this compressed journey funnel that you mentioned, Daniel, a moment ago, also the changes in our audience, the changes in our platforms, the changes in our own companies go very fast. So if we don't have that one source of truth cleared up and feeding into different platforms, then we have a problem, because we'll not only losing time, but we'll become inconsistent. We'll have limitations in terms of reaction to the market, right? And it's much more expensive to fix something that goes wrong than investing a bit more of time and budget to do things right in the beginning, right? So yeah, it's not the reality that I see in Europe, at least in food service, but that's the direction that I guess that other industries are going. And yeah,
You probably see more a lot of resistance to taking that pain early, no?
For sure, for sure. It's again, it kind of, Zhao made a really good point there about the industries specifically, right? And I think that that's a key thing, because it does vary industry to industry, right? Some are in a bit of higher level of maturity than others, right? It's just the nature of the beast. But I think that, yeah, to your point, we do see some resistance. I think when it comes to feeds, especially for traditional platforms like Google and Meta, there used to be a mindset of set it and forget it, right? That, hey, we have a product feed, like it's live, like our products are being advertised on Google and Meta, it's done, right? We're spending whatever it is per month on that, we're getting sales, cool. Where I think that's changed now, and I think the slide alludes to it a little bit as well, in the what's the thing that's going to keep you at the top of those search rankings, number one, and number two, how are you dealing with the competitive environment, right? So you have, let's say, competitors bidding on keywords, competitors bidding on phrases, etc., that are relevant to your products. They're getting found, you're not. So how do you stay relevant, right? The brand equity, okay, it's great, but it's still not going to always win and make you realize the ROAS that you could potentially be leaving on the table. So I think that's an important point to add in there as well.
Totally. And by the way, if anyone connected late, just to remind people that we're talking about how to stop losing money through having your product data in the right place. And you can ask questions on the right. We also already have one very interesting question from Shragat about, which we'll tackle, I think, towards the end, because I think it's a big one about how to optimize your data for AI search, which is fascinating. So anyway, if you have more questions, we may tackle them in the moment, or we may leave them until the end, like this one. Mo, let's continue. So how, I think this is more like, what do you do to then optimize the feed? No.
Mm-hmm. For sure, for sure. And I think, look, there's two points that we need to focus on this slide. The first one we've kind of already covered, talking about feed optimization. We've talked about attributes, etc. But the two others, Zhao has mentioned a couple of times, and I'm keen to dig into them a little bit more. And Shwagat, this will kind of answer your question slightly on a surface level in terms of cross-channel consistency, because I think that's important. But before we get to that, automation, I think, is somewhere where I think a lot of brands are forgetting about the importance of it, right? Now, looking at what our previous answer was about what is a product data feed, what does that look like, where does it go? Okay, let's say we've got a source of truth, we're pushing that feed to a retail media platform, or to Google, or to Meta, or to a marketplace, wherever it might be. What about when new products come into the feed, right? What about when there's changes in terms of pack size, or changes in terms of material or seasonality, or anything else that can affect that product feed? What happens? So this is where the automation is key. So looking at things like, okay, how often am I updating that feed that's going to the platform where I'm spending thousands and thousands of pounds per day on ad spend, right? If I'm doing that once a month, yet I have new products coming in weekly, like, that's a big miss. And we see that quite often, right? So the key thing to get across there is that you need to have a level of automation within the feed that says, okay, we're going to send updates in the feed daily, or we can do it every 15 minutes if needs be, right? and just find that lever that gets, okay, you fix the data in the first part here, the feed optimization, that's done. What does the automation look like, right? Building onto that, what about A/B testing? We made a previous point about, okay, there used to be an element of set and forget. How do we mitigate that? We do that by A/B testing, right? Where should our pack size be in our product title? Should it be at the beginning? Should it be at the end? Should it be in the middle? Should the brand be first? Should it be last? Little things like that seems like small decisions, but ultimately that's going to help you realize the unrecognized ad spend and get more out of what you're spending. And then the last thing, cross-channel consistency. I think it's just making sure, I think I've got one key point on this one, is that making sure your tone of voice is consistent everywhere where your brand shows up, right? How do you do that? You do that with data. You do that with good product data everywhere. And it's the same thing in AI search, right? And are you using that consistent tone of voice when your product shows up on an AI platform when people are searching for it? So I think that that's an important one to flag as well.
I have a question as well, like, because what happens like with when you have like a new product that goes into the market? I don't know, like in fashion, for example, where it's super seasonal, you have like new products coming into your store every week. Is like the automation part like an important part of that?
For sure, for sure. And it should essentially be, in the best case scenario, it should be a seamless transition, right? So let's say I have that new product. Let's take an example. Let's take a jacket that's coming in for autumn winter 2027, right, for a fashion brand. What should happen is that product should be uploaded into a brand systems, right? So let's say they're using an ERP. All those attributes relating to that product should be within that ERP. That then populates directly into the feed. That feed then syncs into Feedonomics every 15 minutes, right? And then from Feedonomics, there's a native integration directly to Google Merchant Center. So point being is that as soon as that product is uploaded, within, let's say, a matter of hours, it's already live on the advertising platform and ready to be bidded on, right? So that's essentially a very, very simplistic view of, okay, what would happen when a new product comes into the feed.
If you think Joao, like of making this happen internally, what do you think are like the typical roadblocks you would find?
This is first, maybe this is important to mention also that in this one, about how time critical are these changes and how detailed we get, we always need to keep in mind that more and more we might not have actual humans seeing it, but all the search, all when the scrollers come, they see it. And that matters. And those hours that Mo mentioned, they matter. Because when we are relevant on a time critical trend, for example, it does make a difference. And automation should not be something that we are afraid of. And this is something that I also try to convey across the organizations that I work on, because you can have a certain control. You can automate the syndication of a given tool, the setup, the format of certain elements, but then you can own the claims. For example, you can tailor still when you go locally, when you work across multiple geographies. About roadblocks, Daniel, I guess that started the one to set up a one source of truth, meaning like a proper product feed, not product description pages. I get it, and I agree with the point.
But
And
is it just me that gets it wrong, or a lot of people think that there's the PDP and that's it? Because I hear about a lot about like, oh, like you need to have a great PDP, like, and then you kind of like, it sounds like a lot of the narrative is like you just need a great PDP and that's it.
That might be an issue. That might be an issue. And that's actually, for example, one of the roadblocks to actually understand the flow. Yeah. So, for example, when we try to bring new technology into the company, first we need to understand what does it bring and what can we action there to build this one source of truth. I think it's quite smooth or feasible for an organization, for example, of the nature of the one I'm working on at the moment. But I would say that the issue starts when you want to put the information out there, depending on where you play, at least in the food industry in specific, where the barriers that you encounter, depending on the channels where you list your products, on the platforms where you put your ads up, that's when the challenge comes up and the workload or potential cost that it brings to the organization.
Mo, I think, shall we move to the next slide?
For sure. I
So
think
yeah, perfect. So I think it's interesting to put like some real examples of like the business impact that this can actually have, no?
definitely. And these are the perfect segue to a point Zhao just mentioned around kind of automation and recognizing automation, right? So I'm just going to touch on that point a little bit more in that
Yeah.
how I see automation, and this links to one of the case studies here as well, is there's automation for the sake of automation, right? And then there's automation with levers in place, right? So, okay, we have a automation flow of a new product coming into the feed that's going to eventually end up on the PDP, right? What's our levers and checks before that goes to the PDP, right? Do we have an internal PDP checklist? That's because at the end of the day, the PDP is driven by the product data. Before it gets to the PDP, are we sitting down with, let's say, a Feedonomics or anybody else that's pushing that data to the PDP? Are we having a checklist of what we want our PDPs to look like? What's excellence in our PDPs? What's our tone of voice like in our PDPs? Anything that's important to the organization, are we actually checking before that's automated and pushed live, right? So I think that that's a key thing as well when it comes to automation, that there should be automation, but with those stringent levers in place that are quite essential. And that links me nicely to the case study as well. Like looking at New Balance, a lot of the challenges as to why they came to us were around the ability to scale when it came to feed updates, right? New products coming into the feed. New Balance got really hot really quickly, right? Like, everybody wanted a pair of dad sneakers about 5 years ago, and that kind of trend hasn't really died down, right?
They're still pretty hot. Yeah, exactly.
Still pretty hot, right? Still no signs of slowing down. So yeah, it's definitely, I think, a pain point that they came to us with was that, okay, how can we scale our campaigns across more markets? Because right now we're doing things too slowly. Maybe we're not sending updates to our ad channels quick enough, right? Maybe we're trying to promote things like Zhao, you mentioned a great point there about trends, right? Certain things that are in trend. How are we getting that across in the feed, and how are we advertising those products on Google? Is that quick enough? If it's once a week, it's not quick enough, right? We need to get that in front of our consumers like now. So that's a lot of the pain points that they had. And that's why they came to us, right? What we were able to do for them was more frequent feed updates, helping them with localized inventory as well. So local inventory ads is something we've not touched on, but again, it links to, okay, let's say I want to find a product now, right? When I search for it on Google, can I see if it's in stock at the local store through the ad, right? So we helped them with that as well. To summarize, their ROAS took a 95% uplift just by doing things more granularly, by doing things more frequently in terms of updates, and by putting that automation in place to help them scale. So that was one that
basically, if they were spending, like if they hadn't done this and they'd spent 2 million on a campaign, they would have lost 1 million
basically. Daniel, my maths isn't that good, so I don't know if I can.
I was in school. I was in school very recently, so it's still fresh in my mind.
I still haven't finished. But no, exactly that, right? If they were spending that, they would have lost. I wouldn't say lost. I would probably have said left it on the table, right? How I look at ROAS is just leaving money on the table, and there would have been a lot of that if they hadn't addressed the feed issues. But going back to the initial point, they recognized it, right? And I think very similar with Joseph and Joseph, another really cool brand. A lot of manual processes in place. They recognized it. They said, hey, this is really slowing us down. It's making it harder for us to improve and promote our priority SKUs within our feed to get them in front of the end customer. How can we address that? Outcome, 38% uplift just through Google Shopping revenue alone, right? And again, average order value increased because once they were clicked in, they were able to see more. So basket sizes got bigger.
Great. Any comments on that, Joao, or any observations?
In terms of the ads that we see there, I guess that the features that have been added by Feedonomics on this one sound great. Mainly that again, and I keep going to or keep mentioning some of the agentic impact that we might experience now and certainly more in the upcoming years, weeks, days, months, years, at all. So I guess that a solution like for campaigns like New Balance does make a difference, and mainly when built on proper data. And I will keep referring to the feed, to the product feed, because that's the unlocking point here for us. We need to keep in mind that when there is this agentic boom nowadays, the simple things as measuring the ROAS that you just highlighted, there is a synthetic traffic coming through, right? So the attribution that we see is no longer like a fully human based. And the only way that we make sure that this goes through is with the data and proper conversion. And if there is no feed there, we might end up with attribution that does not pay off. We are just paying and for robots to see our ads or to click in our ads. And that has a second consequence that again, it's super important to have this feed quite robustly established, because imagine, and I heard this in a podcast one of these days also, that the data pool that then the systems we use refer to will also gradually get poisoned. Because imagine if I want to buy New Balance right now, and if I go to a platform, there might be an issue on stock, might be an issue or availability or color. A robot does not see this. They click 70 times if needed in the same CTA. That also, when then these platforms have data about the users, they will see that João is so interested, the signal is so strong that I pressed 70 times in the same CTA. It was not me, right? So I guess that a proper feed, robust feed, and the solutions, for example, for New Balance right away on the stock to the ads, this make a big difference. Yeah. And I guess that brands should use it. Yeah.
And I was having a quick look at the audience that we have on the webinar today, and we have people from FMCG, from fashion, from retail, also from agencies. If you had to give them like one or two takeaways of actions that they could take tomorrow, what would they be? Mo, for example, we can start with you.
Yeah, I think we've got the next slide should be able to kind of talk to this in a bit more detail. So I think, look, if I was to ignore the slide slightly for a second and just give my 2 cents on the advice I'd give, I would say, number one, look at the data holistically, right? And number two, recognize that the data is a performance lever. We're not in this webinar. I've never mentioned about spending more on retail media or on ads, right? It's not what we're here for. We don't ever talk about spending more. We talk about getting more from what you're currently doing. So I think they're my kind of 2 key takeaways that I'd say, in addition to what's on the screen as well. João, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that as well.
Well, João, maybe we can ask him, what are you going to do tomorrow after this webinar?
I didn't want to ask.
No, there is no sensitive intel here at this point. We are in a journey here. That's clear. The name of the game. It's a journey, and operating across, at least for my scope in this organization, in 21 markets, we face different maturity levels, both of adoption in-house as ability of structuring a solution end-to-end and putting our simple content out there, or even ads out there. Sometimes it's a bit challenging depending on the platforms we select. But there are the 3. With that said, I guess that with a robust product feed in progress, I guess that the time will come that we need into speed and consistency at scale. And that is what I will do, maybe not tomorrow, but in the upcoming months. That's for sure. But 3 takeaways for the audience. I will say that being end-to-end, but the product data still matters a lot. And the product feed overall, product data is part of it, a component of it. So audit the top products, fix the fundamentals. And I guess you have also in the slide there, like titles, attributes, categorization. Don't be afraid of being like going to drill too down, explore the platforms that you are in, because again, we might not see But in retail, more and more robots see on our behalf, and it makes a difference when you are placed in front of users. Second, before increasing budget or changing campaign structure, always check whether the visibility, the relevance, or conversion are breaking at the product level. Because that might be the issue, not really the report you get in the end of the mid campaign or end of campaign. And the third one is that build product data that actually not only works for channels, but for systems, machine readable, complete, current, localized, and protected, of course, always with safeguards for branding. But this is key, I guess, on a day to day on our industries.
And answering the question that Shragat asked before, any like solutions we can give to brands? What was the question exactly? How can they tweak their product data to win on AI search? Anything they can do tomorrow for that?
Tomorrow is tough. I mean Friday for sure, but I think that the main thing that I would say to answer that question, and Shragat, is a great question, right, and one that we get asked fairly regularly. What I would say is that before we get to tweaking the product data, I would always challenge a brand that asks this to look at the fundamentals, right? So are the fundamentals in place right now? So if we take away the AI search part, are your PDPs now on every channel that you're on as good as they can be, right? Is all the performance media you're doing through retail media or traditional channels, is that as good as it could be, right? If the answer to all of that is yes, right, then you're in the best possible starting position for AI search. Then when it comes to, okay, all the fundamentals are in place, our PDPs are the best in the industry, we're super happy with them. The whole digital shelf is looking exactly how we want it to look, everything's great. Then AI search wise, the tweaks you can make there are mainly around actually relevancy around what people are asking for in terms of what are they searching for, what are the questions where your products are specifically relevant, right? So I think, look, it's a quick answer to a very, very broad subject, right? We probably have to get into it in a bit more detail, but my main thing is firstly look at the fundamentals and then tweak for refinement and a more granular level to come up in more relevant specific searches where your products are likely to show. Zhao, I don't know if you've got anything else to add on to that question as well.
No, completely aligned with that. I guess that yeah, it goes also in a bit in direction of my third point about having a machine readable, enriched current content, well syndicated product data present, and of course never forget also the third parties, because LLMs don't only go for what you see as your ideal shelf, right? So a lot of dimensions, even nowadays, it's becoming even more common. At least I already got some requests from Reddit, for example, if you want to look into the solutions they offer for brands, because LLMs refer massively, because there's a lot of engagement, there's a lot of users, and
Yep.
AI is more and more even renting humans. There is actually a platform called Rent a Human to actually interact and engage in platforms, right? So then they complete the circle. They ask humans to interact, they refer to the same platforms, and there is a circle there in these LLMs. So the third parties I will add to that equation.
For sure. No, that makes sense. And it reminds me of something, Daniel, you said earlier, right? You made the point about, I mentioned about Google and Meta being like traditional search channels, right? And it's funny how that's now become traditional. What's kind of that's made me think about is that we used to optimize data to be searchable and to be readable by humans, right? Now that's kind of changed. Now optimizing for human consumption is old school, right? We need to be optimizing for machine searchability, for AI to be able to find our products, for agents to be able to find products. So it's funny how it's all becoming super old school. There's this new front page of the internet that's coming, a new era of commerce that we all hear about a million times a day on LinkedIn. But again, going back to the point to answer the question is, are the fundamentals in place? Because from our experience, when we work with brands that have those fundamentals in place, it makes the process easier, right?
Yes.
They're the ones that are winning right now.
Yeah, and we have this QR on the screen, which offers a complimentary, which means free, feed audit with Feedonomics, which is awesome. What is exactly a feed audit? Like, what will people get? Will they be facing a painful truth if they do the feed audit?
Hey, Daniel,
And
with
I'll
me,
probably see a lot of opportunities.
yeah, with me, to preface, with me, it's always painful truths, right? Like you'll get it, you'll get it directly. But no, just joking. What I would say is a feed audit is we essentially take your feed, right? So you give us let's say the feed that's going to Google Merchant Center, for example, which has a lot of attribute requirements. It's a good place to start. We take that and we run it through a system called the feed grader. The feed grader essentially gives it a result in terms of, okay, best practice for Google, how do you stack up? And then we just grade it A to F. And then we make recommendations on, okay, what can you change, etc. We can also do that for AI channels as well. So, okay, how's your data in terms of readiness for agentic, right? So yeah, that'd be definitely something worth looking at. And I promise not to be that harsh as well when I'm delivering the results.
Maybe you can like set the level of harshness at the beginning. Guys, thanks so much for joining me in this session. Thanks everyone for tuning in. It was super interesting, and I think we'll all agree super relevant and something that people must act on today, if not yesterday, right?
For sure, for sure. Thank you so much, Zhao. It's been a pleasure to do this alongside you. And Daniel, as ever, my friend, always good to chat.
Oh, always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.